My name is Tom Farrell and I'm from Lompoc, California. I was stationed there in 1975 till 77, and then I became a local boy until 86. Well, the first day that we pulled in, we actually had to circle the runway in Minot 4 times because there were snow drifts across the tarmac, and I was scared shitless because I had left California. I had platform shoes, bell-bottom pants, and no fucking jacket. And when the guy picked me up, which was Doug Ogren, hi Doug, sorry you couldn't make it. He picked me up and he said, all right, listen, it's gonna be kind of a weird ride home. I've never been in snow. And there were snow drifts across the road, and I remember looking over and going, holy shit, and go, yeah. Being a California boy and living here in North Dakota, it was bad for me. I developed frostbite on my fingers, my nose, and my ends of my earlobes because I never knew how to dress. It's different now because, you know, every year, these guys, I've seen Monty before and Ron. Tom I haven't seen since 1977. You know, that's a long ass time to not see somebody and still have a high regard for them. Yeah.
It feels like nothing's changed.
No, it hasn't. We haven't stopped laughing since we got here. None of us. Yet! We were probably in the worst possible place we could be, but we always made the best of it. And the attest to this is we're friends after 50 years, and we've never lost a beat. You know, it's been awesome.
It's the worst possible place you could have been.
Well,
you live there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. You know, you just couldn't go run out somewhere on a Friday night. We always had to steal somebody's car or something, or wreck somebody's car. Yeah. So yeah, it's been an adventure. It definitely has been an adventure. And all my friends in California, when they were like, "Why do you keep going back there?" I said, "Because I love the people there. They're just good people. There ain't a damn bad soul here, not one." So. I even ran into some bad people that I didn't really care for, and it's been a fun time, really fun time, always.
Ed Donnelly, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I was stationed in Fortuna 1974 to 1976.
Getting into town.
Well, first impression was coming from a big city and being 18. Green, right out of high school, coming here was like, it's a shock to the system.
What made it so shocking?
Well, I mean, no buildings. The joke was the state tree was a telephone pole. There was a woman behind every tree. Found that to be false. No trees. So, yeah, it was different. It was unique, you know, but we grew into it, you know, I mean, most of the guys that I was friends with were all single. We're all 17, 18, maybe 19, fresh out of high school. So, and Fortuna wasn't much nightlife. You had to make it work for yourself. So there was a lot of adult beverages going on back in those days. So, and it was exactly, yeah. But it was fun. I mean, it was. I always tell everybody that was our college years, you know. We had friends of ours that all went to college, but hey, our 4 years were in the military. We stayed in barracks instead of dorms, you know. We got to live with each other, you know, work together and stuff, and then party together. So it was good. From being back east, we had our share of winters east. In the 60s growing up as a kid, I remember. My father had a plowing business, but we had huge winters, lots of snow back in those days. So coming out here, we didn't really have a lot of snow in North Dakota. If it did snow, it was cold enough, it was dry. It blew around a lot of drifting snow, but the thing got me was the temperature. I saw it during my career, well, not career, but the years out here, probably 1975, January of 75, I saw 60 below zero without a wind chill. So, and then we'd play touch football when it was 10 above in short sleeve shirts. That's how mild it felt to us. Dry climate, bright sun, would have short sleeve shirts outside the barracks, throwing a football around or something, but it's just the way it was, but extreme cold. And I worked up on the hill, up on the power plant, so going up, working midnight, leave the barracks in January, blowing snowstorm, blizzard, the parka all zippered up, going up the hill, fighting the wind, walking like this. It was, that was testy. The best thing about Fortuna was back in the day when most of us were drinking was the bar at the NCO club would close at 2 a.m. Central Time. So of course, us young bucks would say, well, we're not going home yet. The bartender would say, you don't have to go home, but you're not staying here. So we'll load up the cars and drive 7 miles into Westby, Montana. Go back an hour, mountain time. Now it's 1 a.m. Open till 3 a.m. So it'll be 2 hours more drinking.
Only 2.
What's that?
It's only open till 2.
2? No, it's 3 a.m.
Goes down to Montana in 2.
You been back in the 70s? Oh. Okay, so an extra hour.
They
So,
had a lot of alcohol.
so my mistake. But there was one year I was over there with an airman. His name was Mark Rabot, and he had a red
1972 Nova.
Chevelle SS 396, all souped up, big tires in the back, and we'd come rumbling through town. And there was a sheriff in Westby called Chase, was his nickname. And he always tried to get the airman leaving. He'd park around the corner, up by the sign. That was the North Dakota sign entering. He'd always park in the corner. So we'd come around the train tracks, or whatever they were, and Mark would see him and say, there's Chase. He'd stop his car and light up his tires, would spin those things smoking and go flying by this guy. And this guy would try to start his car in the worst way. He probably had a 1960 Ford Squire station wagon as a police car or sheriff's car. Never catch these guys. A lot of guys on the base all had souped up cars and what have you, and that's one of the stories I have. There's a million more, but it's tons of them at the trailer court, you know.
So tell me about the trailer court and where that used to be.
The trailer court was down in Fortuna, and it was a bunch of just single wide trailers that the young airmen, anybody under the rank of buck sergeant, anybody who was married with dependents, they would put them in the trailer court. So I stayed in the barracks. I was still single, but all these guys that I knew in the barracks all got married, and eventually the parties moved to the trailer courts. So we had good times down there. You know, we had game dinners down there. A bunch of guys would go hunting, and once a month they'd pull all their grouse or pheasants, whatever they did, and we'd have a little game dinner and stuff. But it was good times down there. A lot of these guys, these other guys, not me, but a lot of these other guys would experiment smoking this marijuana stuff, I think. But I don't know. That's what I heard. But but that in a nutshell, I mean, that's it was good times, and I got discharged in January of 1976, and I told all these guys, well, you won't see me again. I'm done with Fortuna, going back to city. Well, they eventually got a hold of me somehow and convinced me to come back for the bicentennial in 1976. So I got a buddy of mine, and we drove out here to be out here for July 4th, 1976. And we took us a few days. We come through Wisconsin. Of course, we stopped in Madison, the capital. And back in those days, Schlitz was #1 beer. Loaded up my trunk, as much 12 packs I could get. And I pulled into Fortuna like this. The trunk was dragging on the ground, all loaded with beer, all iced down. And we spent, I don't know, probably a month here. And then I said, well, I'm leaving now again. Never see me again. And I've been back 8 times since. Just something about small towns that everybody enjoys, and I enjoy coming back. So most of these guys too, you know.
The place, all of it?
Yeah, I mean, the people we met over the years, yeah. A lot of them are still here. That we met guys over the years that grew up in Fortuna, good friends of ours that live in Crosby now. They're still in touch with, and I think it's just a laid-back kind of lifestyle, the small towns. Coming from the city, it's a little more, you know, it's, you can't get away with a lot of stuff now to the kind of small towns, so that part is unique, you know, so.
So tell me a little bit more about your job and what you did at the air base, for those who don't know.
I worked in a diesel power plant up on the hill, and we supplied the prime power for the base. And the plant had 4 Norberg 16-cylinder, 800 kilowatt generators that ran the power for the base. In the summer months, we could run 1 generator, enough power for the base. Winter times would always have 2 online. And only because during storms in the winter time, the 35 tower, the big sail, would go around and it would catch the wind and make all the meters in the control room dance like this. And you could tell, sitting in there with headphones on, you could tell when it was into the wind. You could hear the pistons banging, clanging of the machines. And at one time in my time up there, we had 3 engines online once. 3 motors. Normally it's 2 in the wintertime. This one winter, they had 3 actually going. And that was pretty wild. So strong winds up there. I mean, probably hurricane winds, you know. But yeah, it was a noisy place to work, but it was. No, I enjoyed my years here and stuff, and I keep coming back. You know, it's always a good memory for me to be in the Air Force, and I continued on doing public service work. I just retired 39 years with a fire department in Massachusetts, so it's always in my blood, you know. Always wore a uniform, so, you know, I was proud of it.
My name's Larry Larson. I'm from Chisago City, Minnesota. Not Chicago, it's Chisago. And I arrived in Fortuna in March of 1974. And I was the supply guy. I was the guy that everybody loved because they could get the parkas and all that winter gear that they wanted, or extra blankets. So when I arrived, I drove up, and I arrived late in the day, and I wasn't sure if I could get onto the base or not, or whether it was closed, being fresh out of tech school from the Air Force. So there was a little gas station in the town of Fortuna, so I just pulled in there with my car and slept there overnight. Now when I arrived, there was no snow on the ground. When I woke up in the morning, I was about 1 foot deep, buried in it, and it was very cold. But drove up to the base, and you always think these Air Force bases, military bases, the high security, they got the signs out there, deadly force authorized. So I drive up, and the gate's wide open, and there's no one at the gate shack. And I'm thinking like, well, do I drive right on or don't I? So I noticed this little button outside there that you push like a doorbell. So I went up and pressed that and waited and waited and waited. And finally some guy come down, and he's got like really long hair. And I'm thinking, this is the Air Force? What? This guy's got too long a hair. But anyhow, so they take me in and we get checked in. And so begins my 2.5 years that I spent at Fortuna. We'll start as I'm driving up there. We'll back up before my sleeping overnight. As I left the town of Crosby, and I'm driving this way, I come over a hill, and I see this huge building on the horizon with this big antenna going around. Obviously, that must be the radar site. So I thought, oh, that's just over the next hill. Well, a half hour later, you finally arrive at, because as everyone in North Dakota knows North Dakota, you can see forever. And that's basically what it was. It was way out there yet. So it was quite interesting to come out there. I grew up on a farm, so I was familiar with rural. This is double R rural out here. It's, you know, they're saying there was a girl behind every tree. You just had to find a tree. And going back a little bit prior to that, while you're in technical school, you get your assignment to what they call your permanent base, your first duty station. And there was 24 people in my class. This was in Denver, Colorado. And 20 of them ended up in California, 3 ended up in Texas, and the 24th one ended up in Fortuna, North Dakota. So everybody's kind of like joking around, because Minot Air Force Base was well known because it was a large Air Force base, and there's a joke, why not Minot? Well, it turned out Minot would have been great because that was our support base. But if you go over to what they call family services, they would have packets on all the Air Force bases, so you could go over there and get some information on it. So I wandered over there, and they pulled out the folder and they took out a North Dakota highway map, and they had the town of Fortuna circled. And that's all they had for information on Fortuna, North Dakota. You do get a letter from what they call a sponsor, someone at station here, usually probably the person you're replacing. They send you a letter with a little packet telling you about it. They just said, well, it's cold, but they try to prop it up. Oh, plenty of hunting and fishing and, you know, whatnot. But so it was somewhat of a shock, like I said earlier, being from a farm and coming out here. But then you realize that's like, you know, back home a town was 5 miles away. Now you're 25 miles away from a town. But the theater, we had a theater in Crosby, indoor theater. The nearest drive-in was in Plentywood, Montana, about 40 miles. But it was a little bit of a shock, but you fit in, you did your job, and made a lot of friends. And as you'll see later on, I mean, we've come back here, I don't know how many times, to meet up with more and more of our friends in that time frame. And I served at a couple other duty stations while I was in the Air Force after this, and I couldn't tell you probably on one hand the names of people that I knew from those 2 other duty stations versus all the names I can tell you here. And
What do you think brought that closeness? Was it just the kind of area?
well, it's the area certainly played in, because we didn't have things, you know. You had to work together, you had to play together, and it just made the best of it, you know. And of course, we're all young GIs, so we had money. We didn't make a lot, but our housing and food was provided, so we had cash to spend. So we all had nice hot rod cars, you know, and the local gals liked the base guys because we had the money, you know. So there was some competition. The local boys didn't care for us too much, but we did end up, you know, getting along with a lot of the civilian community. A lot of the guys worked on the local farms, and over the years, quite a few of the base guys married local gals and stayed in the area. And I could list off names and names and names of all of them too. But that's so again, people fell in love with the area, and I love it. I love coming out here, and it's still friendly people. And I remember when we were driving up here, everybody waving to me, and I'm thinking, I don't know them, you know. And you wave back, and then you find out that's just it. Everybody waves because you're a neighbor. You're 30 miles away or 3 miles away, you were a neighbor.
Okay, my name is Kim Larson. It used to be Kim Bland when I lived here in Fortuna. My dad moved here with the family in the summer of 1971. I was starting my freshman year of high school, and I was a military brat, which means your family is in the service. My dad was a master sergeant here, and I had 3 siblings. I was a freshman. I had a sister that would have been an 8th grader, a brother that was in 3rd grade, and then a little sister that wasn't in school yet. So when we moved, when we drove up here, I think we all cried. It's like we came here from Mississippi, and Biloxi, Mississippi actually. So we came from a big city. And now we're moving up here and there is nothing. And we're looking and it's like, where's the town? Where's the base? Where's anything? But we grew to love the place. I spent most of my high school years going to Westby. And it was kind of cool because you lived in North Dakota, you went to Westby, and there was an hour difference in time. So it took you a while to kind of get used to that because you'd go to school and it'd be an hour later, and then you come home, it'd be an hour earlier or vice versa. But yeah, I grew to love the place. Again, it was a small town. And being in high school, you kind of started dating the boys, and there weren't a lot of boys in the school because it was kindergarten through 12th grade. And so once I started dating the guys, then I kind of ran out of boys to date, and then it was just kind of transitioned into dating the GIs out at the base. Much to my dad's, you know, he was pretty terrified to find out we were dating GIs, but I did meet my future husband here, and the strange part is the summer of my senior year, my dad got transferred to Washington State. So here I was, actually I was engaged to my husband at that time. So we had to move out to Washington, and I went to a huge, huge high school in Tacoma, Washington. Hated every minute of it. I probably cried more about that than I did about moving up to Fortuna. So then what happened was we worked out a deal that 3 months up to my graduation day, we moved back, or I did. I moved back here and stayed with friends so I could graduate with my high school class. And so I married my husband actually on my 18th birthday, and in Plentywood, Minnesota, or Plentywood, Montana. Geez, I'm getting the two screwed up. But so then we lived here as husband and wife for a year in the trailer court in Fortuna. Woohoo! And my sister, who was a year younger, she did the exact same thing, except she came and lived with us and graduated with her class in 1976. And like you probably heard this from all of the guys, it's just a close-knit family. We just loved, you grow to love the area. I know it's very remote, you know, if you're used to being a city girl or whatever, but I still have friends that live in the area, that Facebook friends, I guess, but I love coming back to the reunions and meeting up with all these, you know, the people, and to find out that a few of them stuck around. It's just, I have grown kids, I have grandkids, and it's just weird driving through Crosby and all these little kids are just, you know, running around on bicycles and just having a great old time. We can't do that where we live. You know, it's unheard of. And we get up to a stop sign and it's like, any traffic coming? Nope. And it's like, that's unheard of too. I hate traffic jam, you know, the stuff you have to deal with in the cities. Traffic and crime. And it's just a slow-paced place, and I love it here. So that's my story.
I'm Brad Skane. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And what years were you stationed?
I was here from March till March 1974 to October 1976. being remote, and I've lived in a lot of small towns, this was actually the smallest town I've ever been in, ever, and being on an air base, and I thought, where am I? But I grew up a country boy, but my parents got divorced, and then they got remarried after about 3.5 years, but my father was from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, in which we moved up to, and I grew up, became a country boy, and then went to the hood of South Minneapolis. So my out was joining the military. And when I came up here, you can't describe it to anybody. The people up here was the friendliest place on the planet. And it broke my heart to come back for a reunion, and because of all the oil money that was brought up and how things changed dramatically, even with the native people of the area. Because when my biggest memory of this up here, you were walking down the road, highway, anywhere, I don't care, you're walking by yourself, that very first car that would come by would pick you up and give you a ride. If you stopped by someone's house, they were inviting you in. Did you eat? Did you have lunch? I had more food by more people that I hardly knew anything about. And you can't, you wouldn't imagine that there was a place ever up here like that. So that's what made this area Fortuna and the base. And they put up with a lot of dysfunctional kids. We were kids in the military, and that brought some headaches into their lives because in the area, but they were so good to us. They brought us in like their own. And again, the local farmers, the people in town, you can't say enough how the people up here were so amazing. Everybody, there wasn't a car you didn't pass, everybody waved. Everybody waved. And yeah, it was so, as remote as it was, you love being here because of that. The people were amazing.
Do you think it's still that way, or has it changed?
No.
What's your...
No. There's some great people still up here. But money, all the oil money, even changed the local people. They upset about somebody buying them out of their land and doing things. You didn't hear any of that stuff prior to the money coming into the area. It's, no. Now it's just typical people wherever you go. It wasn't anything like it was. It was real family values, good stuff. I mean, it was just, back then it was just good stuff. And as much as hellions of young kids like to be, us included, we're no different than any other young guys, drinking, sneaking away, getting in trouble, whatever. We just paid a little different price because we were military. But it was a great experience. It changed me a lot of my life. And that's why the love of all the people. We had a special bond because when you're 40 below zero and there's nowhere to go, there was times we got in scrappers with each other, whatever, but you're like family. You just looked out for each other, and I think it had a lot to do with the influence of the people that were in this area as well. I remember a time that, and I do not know what the temperature was, but it was very sub-zero. And we were trying to start vehicles, and I had the dozer in the shop, and so I started the dozer up and put it outside to make room for cars and to come in and out. We were towing them and pushing them into the motor pool to warm them up so we can get things running, and because we needed transportation. And so that sat quite a bit of the day outside, and when I went to move it back into the shop, I broke the tracks because it was the steel tracks because it was so cold. The tracks broke on the dozer. So it was cold. I mean, it was cold up here. Well, steel, It's a cast type steel. They're called, you know, the steel tracks on any track machine. But it was shocking to know it was that cold that would break 3/4 inch plate steel and it just like shattered it like glass, and that's cold. But I to this day, after the military, I actually became a heavy equipment operator for years, and I own to this day a lot of heavy equipment, and I've never broke anything like that to this day. So it was cold, and and I'm guessing temperature-wise was probably well below 40 below. I don't know how much, but and wind chill doesn't change anything. Temperature is temperature, but I don't know, maybe it was 50 below then. But it was, I know, record cold, but the wind never quit blowing up here. When it quit blowing, we had a party, and that wasn't too often. The wind quit blowing, we'd celebrate. So it was a wonderful experience to be, and I think that's why I know a lot of people have gone to other bases and other places, but something about Fortuna, it's just, and I really believe, again, it was because the people and the place. It's the native people up here. They took you in like family. It was a great place to be.